comfortable. Thank you. So, hello and welcome everyone to today's NR4CS session. This is one of our last sessions for the network as it stands right now. I'm going to quickly share my screen. Okay, is everybody able to see my screen okay?
Yeah,
all right.
Good. Yeah.
Thanks, Claire. So today we'll be discussing about a topic that is close to all of our hearts, which is science communication and citizen science, how to bring society into the heart of science. So this meeting is being recorded and all resources shared throughout this meeting will be shared with all the registrants. If you feel comfortable, please keep your cameras on for a good interactive and engaging session. Today, we have the privilege of having two of our members presenting their work. First, we'll begin with Silvana Munzi, and then followed by Tesfaneh Shimelis. We'll have a combined Q&A for their presentations. Then we'll move on to our guest speaker today, who is Joana. Joana, please help me pronounce your surname.
Magalhães.
Yes. And then we'll get into a open mic discussion and Q&A. And then we'll also give a little bit of teaser about what lies ahead for NR4CS. Now, without further ado, I'm happy to introduce to you Silvana Munzi, who today will be talking about the ECHO soil and ambassador model. Silvana is a researcher at the Center of Ecology, Evolution and Environmental Changes at the University of Lisbon. Her research focuses on lichen ecology, biodiversity monitoring, and citizen science, while her expertise also includes project management and science communication. Silvana also works at the MCAA as a proposal writer officer and has been very supportive and helpful in getting lots of projects for the MCAA so far. She's also currently involved in several citizen science projects focused on soil science. With that, I will stop sharing my screen, and Silvana, you're welcome to start sharing yours.
Thank you, Pooja, for the presentation and for the opportunity to be here with you. I will talk about one of the projects I'm involved in, that is the EcoSoil project, and about the model we are using to engage citizen scientists in the project. A few words about the project. Is a research and innovation action co-funded by the European Union under the Horizon Europe program. The duration is 4 years. It started in 2023 and will end in May 2027. And the idea is to engage citizens in the monitoring and protecting and restoring soils. The idea is not only to collect data that are useful to scientists, but is to build skills and enhancing the knowledge of citizens about soil and the importance of these metrics that sometimes is a bit, underrated with respect to atmosphere and water, to air and water. The partners are 16 partners from all over Europe, and the coordinator is the Free University of Bolzano in Italy. You can find all the information about the project on the website, so I will summarize here the tools and activities that we planned and we are realizing. We wanted to realize 28 citizen science initiative across the EU member states. We are very ambitious because we want to reach, 60,500 sites and collect this number of samples to analyze across Europe. To that, we realize a toolbox that is a series of free and online tools that citizens can use. and it includes video, forum, protocol, guidelines, all the kind of information they need to do the work. All the data that we are collecting are completely available in the repositories, that is the EcoRepo, and we have an app, of course, that facilitates the collection of the data. How do we engage the citizens? We decide to use an approach that use intermediate figures that are the ambassador. So the ambassador were involved at the beginning of the project in designing the initiative. So they gave their contribute to the design of the activities to be realized and became part of the eco team. They need to reach out citizens and the group because often the ambassador are like teacher or farmers or NGOs, so they have already a group of people that are interested in the project and they reach out to them. They are trained because we explain them how to use all the tools. We are always available for them to talk if they have doubts, if they have some problems, we are there for them. They need to distribute the soil kits that we prepare that are a box, practical a box with all the material that the citizens need to collect the samples. And then the ambassador also need to collect the samples and send back to us for the analysis. So this model, we thought it was an effective model because it shifts the communication from a top-down dissemination model, so from scientists to people, to a community-based engagement model. So they are already part of the community. They are trusted because they are already embedded in the local community. So this is something that in city design can be a problem because people not always trust scientists and the way we talk to them. Having ambassador also ensure that we have an appropriate format and language for non-specialists because usually they are not specialists also. So if it works for them, it works also for the other scientists, for the other citizens. And they are trained also to translate what the message we want to drive to the citizen scientist. So there is this part of knowledge transfer that increase also the skills of the ambassadors. And the idea finally is to build a community and not just to recruit volunteers. And we hope that this community will stay after the end of the project. You can see here, we are still developing, we are still collecting all the data, so we don't have final results at the moment, but you can see an image of the repository that we developed, the EcoRepo, and citizens and ambassadors can find their data in the repository. They also have, of course, constantly update about the project activities and results through the newsletter, to the project news on the website, all the social media. Is this model completely successful? It is in a great part because ambassadors are very committed, but still there are some mismatch caused by delay in the tool development that, you always have these kind of problems in a project. Sometimes they just stop answering, I don't know, because they lose interest or because their life change. Sometimes they don't send back the kids, and sometimes they don't follow exactly the training and the instruction. So it's not the solution to the problem of engagement citizen science, but we have to say that it is working quite well. And that's all. Thank you for your attention, and please go to the website and to the social media to have more update about the project.
Thank you so much, Silvana. If there are any questions, please put them in the chat. We will have a combined Q&A with Silvana and the next speaker, Tesfaneh. I am going to share my screen again. So, our next speaker, Tesfaneh Shimelis, will be talking about provider perspectives on abortion care, challenges and opportunities for public engagement, and health communication. He is a public health professional and lecturer at Debre Tabor University. He combines academic teaching with research and project management and currently serves as a data quality officer at the Center for Implementation Sciences in Health. His work also focuses on reproductive health, cancer care, sexual and reproductive health and rights, and strengthening, health systems through research, education, and data quality improvement. All very important topics. And with that, over to you, Tesfaneh, to share your screen, please.
Thank you, Pooja. I'll share my screen. Can you see my screen?
Not yet.
Wait a moment.
Sure.
What about now?
It's coming on. It's loading. Yes, we can see it. If you could put it in slideshow.
Okay. Thank you. My name is Tesfaneh from Sabah University Centers of Implementation Science and our university. So,
Tesfaneh, sorry, can you just put it in slide mode? Yes, it was loading. All right. Yes, we see your screen now. Thank you.
Okay. Okay. So, one of our centers just we have a lot of projects, but the provider perspectives on abortion care is one of our projects, and I engage as a PI for just around 1 year project in Amhara region. So in our setup, abortion is one of sensitive issues, including providers couldn't communicate easily, and a lot of training is a lot of any sections, but when it comes to the actual practice, providers face a lot of challenge, especially from the community response, from their family, and sometimes there is a conflict with their own attitudes. They couldn't clarify their attitude, but so that's make challenge for doing practice. Okay, so since 2005, Ethiopia has just liberalized the abortion law, but still now, as if abortion is high, it's just around 10%. So there is a hidden barrier that's just related to the attitudes. It's not the law. So we try to analyze the data in 3 hospitals in Amhara region. It's big cities in the region and the big hospitals. It's just a comprehensive referral hospital. So it's just around 670 providers. So there is an in-depth interview and also quantitative data collections. So they reveal that the providers, they faced, a significant challenge, especially from their colleagues, sometimes from their community, their neighbors, and a lot of pressures. So we provide some training and we engage in the other side, the community, especially those young women, and also they just respond to us. The providers, they couldn't provide enough information, especially the procedure, the consequence, and something. And sometimes they couldn't treat properly. So that leads to just the unsafe way. So the overall our strategy we used, they try to link some engagement between the providers and the community, especially those teenage and young women. So we couldn't, conduct another project, especially the implementation one, due to shortages of the budget. But we tried to propose a lot of strategy based on our findings, especially, we use social medias and some platforms to make some conversation. And also, we just use some technologies like medical abortion is currently uh, emerging science. So by using these strategies, we can communicate our findings to the community, and we just engage the community to such response. So overall, in our setting, the big challenge is not about only the translating information in the document. Rather, there is some cultural, linguistic barriers, and sometimes we need some, indirect way rather than directly translate some words, especially scientific methods and principles. So, based on our community thinking, their levels of awareness and so on, we can make some improvements and we can engage the community participation. We also see such engagements of the community in another project. It's not maybe specified in here, but we make workshops and engage the communities in those workshops. They comment on those our implementation strategies. Sometimes they provide to us a practical way rather than more a scientific our scientific methodology and scientific orders. They just suggest to us some levels of community practical ways. So it's overall, thank you. I think my screen is just visible. Thank you, Pooja. Thank you all.
Thank you very much, Tesfaneh. And with that, I open the floor for any questions you have for Silvana and Tesfaneh. If anybody feels comfortable to open their mic or raise their hand or put your questions in the chat. Joana?
May I? Yes.
Yeah.
Sorry, I didn't raise my hand before. I was just wondering because Silvana, well, I already put a question regarding to that in the chat, but I was just wondering, well, it's normal that sometimes it's difficult to keep people engaged in the projects, and then I think you were mentioning this that you're getting some difficulties on having the kids sent back. So I understand that you don't have the numbers yet because you're still recruiting, but I was just wondering whether the experience that you had so far in the project, you already have some learned lessons on how you can at least incentivize the ambassadors that are still joining on that at least some of the things can be avoided so that you can increase this ratio of participation and having the results at the long term.
Sure. We try to incentivize them, also giving them visibility. For example, on the website and on our social media, there are some specific news devoted to ambassadors. They have a badge, a certificate. So there is this kind of mechanism of that you probably know. Now, one of the problem is that some of them participate in the project because they are interested in the data, in the results, not only in the activities, not only on the general purpose of the project, but in the data, in the results. And this is especially when we talk about farmers, for example. They really want to know what's happening in their soil. And this is hard. This is a hard part because analysis take time, and so you don't have the results immediately, especially if you're talking about the DNA extraction and metagenomic analysis. So it takes time. And what we do is to constantly talk with them and saying where the analyses are, at which point we are, and we try to give feedback even if we don't have the final results about the status of the project of the work. And then you should try to have no delay in what you promise. And for example, we had this problem with the app that was really bad for the project, because people were planning the activity in a certain moment in the year because they were available at the time. And also you have this difference about the climate in different parts of Europe. So of course you cannot sample soil in Finland in winter, and you cannot sample soil in Portugal in August. So it's impossible, but you should try to avoid any delay in the roadmap that you planned, because that really cause a disengagement of the ambassador and of the citizens. But yeah, I think that being honest with them about what you can do, about what they can do, about what they gain with the participation in the project is key for keeping them engaged.
Thank you, Silvana. Thank you, Joana, for your question. Do we have any questions for the speakers?
If not a question, but I just wanted to, or maybe I can leave it to Beste, but Tesfaneh, I really, I think you hit some key points around communication and health practice, and in our countries, it's mostly skepticism around science. So it's interesting to also see skepticism around health because of its inadequate care or health services being given. So it's very, thank you for sharing and also highlighting how much it is an issue of communication and not just policy.
Thanks, Claire. Beste?
Hi, very interesting to hear both experiences. I wonder, in the case of Tesfaneh's research, how do you recruit those representatives? I'm guessing there must be stigma around. So I'm curious. So how do you attempt to recruit them? How successful is recruitment? Like, what's the percentage of recruitment compared to attempted recruitment? Yeah, what can you tell us about this?
Thank you. Can I proceed, Pooja? Okay, thank you. Just as a beginning, in our setup, especially related to abortion service, mostly the midwives and OBGYN gynecologists, the primary providers that just give this service. So we try to, from those 3 hospitals, we try to first count the numbers, and also from the administrative office, they just get from those who just signed on this facility, how many of them took a training, especially for abortion service. Different NGOs in our setup, they provide the abortion service, and there is a sign agreement. From the beginning, they signed some agreements. So based on that agreement, they took the training, and based on their training, they provide a service. But the issue is just most of the provider initially they want to engage on those training, but when it comes to practice, they couldn't. Like due to different reasons, they couldn't provide the service. So a lot of challenge, especially in the beginning, but they start by collecting some quantitative data. For example, since when they just start training and how many years on participate on the health service and something. So specifically for the in-depth interview, they select specifically currently those who just provide the service rather than overall those providers on that area. So a lot of issues. One of the issue, they couldn't provide the correct information, they hide the information. So we used different strategies, especially in some facilities. Most of the providers are they couldn't enter in our interview and some techniques. So they recruit those providers, those collectors from outside such area. They couldn't know their background, their community, so they bring another data collector from another area. Because due to that, they make some confidences, and also they make some, they boost their confidentialities, especially for those feared to speak and another setting, for example, if the provider is woman, they try to, interview by women. And so in that case, they reduce those issues. I think, I try to respond anything if you want. I know that.
Beste, do you have any unanswered questions?
No, not really, but I understand this is ongoing work, and one needs to also approach challenges in the field as they come. So that seems to be what Tesfaneh's team are doing. Yeah, thank you very much.
Thank you, Beste. Tesfaneh, I just generally speaking from your experience, what sort of impact have you felt in society of your work? Of course, as we all understand, this is a very sensitive issue, possibly stigmatized. So, and of course, we're talking about communication and engagement. So have you seen any positive impact outside of the stakeholders you work with?
Yeah, especially those providers, they faced a lot of challenges regarding the practice. Initially, most of the providers, they are interested to, give these services, especially they saw a lot of teenagers in the unsafe abortion. But when the times goes, they just receive some, from families, especially in our surroundings, some religious perspectives, and also from their colleagues, even if some of from their wives. They just add some nicknames to those providers. So in that case, the providers, they slightly, touch from those services, ignored those women and something. So we communicate with different partners, especially like IPAS and different partners in our setup to provide this service and refresh training, and sometimes, attitude clarification trainings for those providers. And also they try to engage some community leaders, especially in our setting. There is community leaders in specific areas. So they collect to them, they shared some evidence, especially the consequence of unsafe abortion, those young women. And we try to, perceive as it's not contradict with the religion, but if those provided didn't the service, the women went to another uncleaned and just unprofessional way, and they may sometimes lose their life. So in that case, we try to balance the consequence with the woman's health rather than just yes or no and something from there. Rather to say yes or no, we just ask them if those providers couldn't the service for those women they just search another way. But due to that way, we might lose the woman, and there is a severe consequence on them. So if those providers, provide or add those services to the woman, at least we save the woman. So in that case, the committee leaders, they try to understand, but it needs, a series of training, a series of attitude change, different programs. But at the beginning, we just made a good progress on the attitude change.
Thank you, Tesfaneh. Recently, I heard of this phrase that making change in society and permanent change in society is almost like painting the Eiffel Tower. Like, by the time you reach the top, you have to start all over again from the bottom. So it's an ongoing work. And thank you so much for contributing to that. We can take more questions later on in the discussion. And I'm going to share my screen again and introduce our last speaker for today's session. Right. So, sorry, I can't see the screen. So today we're gathered here to talk about science communication and citizen science, and our guest speaker for that today is Joana. Joana is also a Marie Curie Fellow and was recently awarded for her outstanding contribution to citizen science and science communication. She is the science communication area leader in science, working in Science for Change. She holds a PhD in biochemistry and molecular biology, obtained under the MSc of Doctoral Networks back in 2008. She's the scientific coordinator for the project Coalesce, building the European competency framework for science communication, and team member for the ECS project and Impetus project. She's also the vice chair for the policy working group of both the European and Portuguese associations for citizen science. Joana, over to you.
Thank you so much, Pooja. I'm very happy to be here with you today. Let me share my screen. 1 second. So is it okay?
Yes, perfect.
Okay, perfect. So then I'll start. You already received in the invitations for today's meeting or session, and here are a little bit of the things that we will be covering today. So to explain the relationship between citizen science and science communication, reflect a little bit on how communication strategies can support the impact of citizen science projects, and I'll also share some tools and resources that we have been building in projects that I've been participated in the last years, but also ongoing ones. And then we're very happy to, in the discussion, to exchange any experiences and perspectives that I think we have already been doing with the previous speakers. So traditionally, science communication has been built in what is called a deficit model, where you have scientists disseminating in one way about research results, and it's mainly based on the ignorance of lack of knowledge from the audiences, and in a way to persuade them. We have been moving from this one dissemination model to what I call moving beyond the binary, and trying to see communication of what researchers do to multiple target audiences. So it's not only the citizens, but also how we can connect to other researchers that may be from different fields and we do not have the same way of thinking and talking. An important connection also with the private and public sector, particularly in the case of knowledge transfer for these groups, but also it's very important to consider media audiences. So how we can connect with journalists, particularly in obtaining long-term relationships, so that we can also make more relevant cases, not only about the results, but questioning ethical aspects that in the end are the speakers from the society itself. And also, besides of considering different types of audiences, we are also making it more participatory. And here is where there is a bond with the citizen science field. So I won't go into detail the different models, but as I mentioned, we have been moving in terms of science communication from a deficit model to a more participatory, where people can engage and also participate in discussions, setting up agendas or research questions. And we have seen a traditional an evolution as well in the models of citizen science, so going for more contributory levels of engagement to co-created. So this go very much in parallel of what you could see of both models. And this was something that caught our attention in the last years. And together with some colleagues, Ayala, Joseph, and Alice, we have created a special edition on bridging citizen science and science communication. Where we wanted to focus particularly on 3 topics. So one is the synergy between theory of practice of both fields, different approaches of stakeholder engagement, and also innovative aspects and trends for the intersection between both fields. So I won't go in detail the different articles, so I suggest you go and try to find what could be more useful for you. We tried to cover a very wide geographical range, and I think we were able to do it. We wanted to move and not create a Eurocentric kind of edition. So we have contributions from Europe, but also from Africa, from Latin America, and we also have contributions from Australia. So the different articles that you would be able to find were focused particularly in identifying audiences and tailoring messages, on how we can have contained communication strategies throughout the full cycle of projects, how to make strategies more inclusive, but also a shared sense of resilience. In terms of innovative trends, we had contributions relating to participatory and civic journalism to rebuild trust, but also how we can encourage two-way conversations to talk about particularly taboo research topics. And I'm already seeing Shimelis, because of course I remember the articles with the presentations that were done before this one. So I won't go also in much detail on the main findings, but I think there are some highlights that I would like to share. One of them is regarding the research and practice collaborations and how they can play a key role in bridging theory with real world applications. So this was something that was very important for us within this special edition. I would also mention, for example, the need for alternative publishing and reporting platforms. One of the things, of course, was connected to a lack of funding within certain journal practices. So how can we create alternative systems that still guarantee quality, but also accessibility beyond academia? Again, key barriers were they still persist. So they are related to limited funding and lack of time. But it's also we also see this future progress on underexplored areas that can promote inclusivity, standards, and resource support. So I would like to take you back to a few years ago, and this was within an European project called New Zero. So it was funded under the previous work program from the European Commission, where there were 8 sister projects that were working particularly in science communication. So this project was very much focused in citizen science, and it came from a shared need from different projects to undertake communication actions, particularly to engage citizens and at the long term with their projects. So we started the project by performing a study to understand who are the usual suspects when we communicate in citizen science projects. So this survey was conducted with a response of 157 citizen science projects. And what we saw was that they still tend to interpret communication as a dissemination activity. So the target audiences were clearly citizens, which is also expected because they are the main ones that you want to bring along with your project. And the later ones, or the less target audiences considered were policymakers, other scientists, but also industry. So within this, our proposal was how we can better enlarge the scope of the communication actions and also the audiences for citizen science projects. So we brought along 39 citizen science projects that were active at the time. And we brought them together with particular kind of stakeholders. That's called the quadruple helix stakeholders. For those who are not familiar with these terms, they are meant to describe researchers, citizens, industry, and policymakers, and we also included the media due to their relevance. So these projects were divided in 4 labs, so they had to decide which were the audiences that either they haven't considered before or they wanted to enlarge the scope of their project with. And we had a transversal lab, which was the one for the media and journalists that everyone took part. So with this, we involved more than 140 stakeholders and science communication experts together with these projects. And the idea was first that we had a co-creation session between all of them. We then had an implementation phase and a final validation. So in the first sessions, what we did was we brought together the citizen science projects with the science communication professional and their stakeholder of interest to co-create communication actions for their citizen science projects. So first we started on understanding the perspectives and the objectives, then making also a diagnosis of the communication strategies of the project, and then going from different opportunities to mutual benefits between the stakeholders and the citizen science projects and plan particular actions. So this methodology is published, and you're very welcome to use it within your own projects, even though you may already be in different phases. It's always worth to rethink how we can do better and reach different audiences that we may have not considered before. So one of the things that we also did was to look into what were the impact frameworks that were already existing at the time. So we didn't want to reinvent the wheel. So what we did was try to integrate indicators particularly related to communication and participation for quadruple helix stakeholders into already existing ones. So one of the particularities that we also tried was, of course, projects may be very specific within their own nature. So we created a matrix that actually allows you to look into your project activities and think about reflectively how can you define communication indicators in your own activities, but also to understand what is really operative and also measurable within time, considering also human resources that the projects may have. So this is also available. I don't know, Pooja, maybe what I could do also is, because if this is in YouTube, I can even share the links directly in a comment, so we can also see how we can better do this to support people. So within this project, we have created a lot of resources that are there and they're still valid. So some of them already have 3 years, but I would say they are still timely for people to use them. They are available at the SES platform besides the project website that still is alive. And what we did with all the learnings from the projects that were participating in the labs, we created what we call blueprints, that we have the methodology that they use, exactly what their project was about, and the different activities that they have defined, their indicators, and then we have real life examples on how this was applied. So, of course, today I don't have time to go through all of them, and I decided to choose 2 examples. So, as the least target audience or the least chosen target audience was industry, I thought could be a possibility to include it here so that we think about a little bit outside of our comfort zone, and also due to its relevance nowadays. Regarding the topics of misinformation and supporting trust in science, I've also selected the science journalists. So within each of the blueprints, you will have defined exactly who is the target audience that we are talking about. So, for example, in the case of private sector, you would find industry, private companies from multinational to SMEs and startups, but it may also include particular roles that are working within this particular sector. So they may be people that are in research and innovation departments, in the communication department, or corporate social responsibility. There are several challenges and opportunities that we have identified. They are, for example, what I mentioned, an uncommon target for citizen science projects. There is much lack of awareness on business models and also exploitation plans, whilst within the side of the industry, it's still a little bit reluctant towards citizen science due to lack of knowledge or understanding exactly what it is and whether you can trust the results that you find. So within the barriers, as I mentioned, there can still be a lack of trust in citizen science generated data. One of the options could be establishing a network of ambassadors from the projects. So we already seen, for example, the ambassadors network in the ECHO project, but there are many other projects that work not only as data collectors, but also how can they improve the knowledge of what the projects are doing. Or, for example, it's also important to consider that the pacing work and obtaining the results is different. And I think this was also something that Silvana mentioned now, is how can we make accessible some kind of information so that we create a relationship, but also a connection with the data that is available. And there is also, for example, some kind of lack of legislation and norms within different countries, or, for example, the existence of conflicts of interest. So it's also important to understand what is the legislation operating in the countries and always declare the possible conflicts of interest. So in terms of messages that could be sent out to the industry to convince to become partners in citizen science projects can be in making it understandable that citizen science is a source of new ideas, that there is also this social benefit in terms of empowering citizen scientists and also recognition. And there can be a possibility for knowledge transfer, but, for example, to also bring new clients that weren't expected. And I'm gonna give an example about this. So it must be always a mutual benefit and a win-win situation. So within the different tools and channels, still what was preferred by the industry was the use of informal places and spaces to build trust, and a very how do you say, and highlights particularly on creating personal relationships before having these random emails that are also unpersonalized. So it's very much into the relationships that can be formed within people. Within social media, LinkedIn was the top channel. Also, there was suggested a regularity within the post that should be conducted. And one example of the case studies that we had within the project was RioNet. That is an interactive educational tool that guides citizens in the assessment of hydrologic and ecologic status of a river. And they were one of they received an honorable mention in the European Citizens Prize for Citizen Science. And initially, they started the project focusing very much on enlarging their scope in terms of citizens that were participating and collecting data. And since the monitoring, of course, is very time consuming and requires training from the team, they decided to team up with companies that offer open air leisure time activities. So this would be a possibility for them to implement train the trainer session and include in the portfolio of these companies that are already working in different activities that can be conducted under the open air. It would give them an enlarged portfolio of what they could offer for potential clients. And also, it could be considered as an activity to be included under the tourism sector, which was something that they didn't have into account before. So within each of the blueprints, you will also find a series of recommendations that you could use in terms of how to reach and bridge the gap within these particular audiences. No, and some of them in regards industry are first to map and understand the different types of private, public, and third sector that could align with engagement strategies. It's also very important to already bring some evidence so that you can generate trustworthy relationships and gain credibility. The citizen science generated data is very valuable, and it should be able to show the added value in order to improve products, services, and also different types of capital. And of course, when you start looking for partners, it's important that you also try to involve industries with social commitments, because in the end, these are already those who probably have an alignment in terms of the engagement of people within their own practice. And just to complete a little bit what is this aspect of connecting with the industry, I would like just to share these guidelines which were published, I think, last month. And this was from 3 pilots that were conducted within the European Citizen Science Project, where they tried to understand companies that were already including citizen science practices within their own business model, and how can we continue to encourage these kind of synergies to happen. So I won't read them all, but I just wanted to let you know that this is also out there. So I think it's a very good complement on first having the blueprint and understand how you can reach this how can you reach this particular audience, and then also trying to understand which are the models or the positive models that already exist so that you have more arguments in terms of convincing potential partners to collaborate with you. As I mentioned, the other audience that I selected for today are journalists, and they can be both generalistic and specialized journalists, in particular science and data journalists. They can also be press and communication officers from research institutions, or just science communicators and media practices at large, including obviously freelancers. So some of the challenges here are that journalists need stories that are newsworthy. So sometimes the concept of news may not be understood from the citizen science projects, and what kind of information that can use. There's also a little comprehension of the practices, the rules, and that happens in a newsroom. But on the same time, there is little understanding still from the journalist point of view of how is the ethos from citizen science projects and how this can be different from research, more traditional research projects. So again, you will be able to find these barriers and mitigation strategies. There may be some concerns in regards, for example, the property of data and their license. There's always, of course, a preferable approach for open science. It's also important to consider the exclusivity and timing. So it's suggested to have an open and transparent approach in terms of constraints or different needs. And we also observe a need for training on both sides to make it understandable exactly how both worlds work. So within this last observation, what we try to do within the lab, specifically where we join the citizen science projects and journalists, is we first did a training session between all of them. This is also available online. And the first one was very much focused on how to pitch a news story. So again, we had a very much intuitive approach in first understanding exactly how the media system works in terms of the production process, the newsworthiness criteria, but also how are the different target audiences reached and the different formats that we currently have from the media system. Then was also very important to understand how we could frame a story. And one example was to try already to take advantage of news that are happening nowadays. And at the time, one example could have been COVID, for example, in regards to research on planetary health. Nowadays, we could have many of the projects of citizen science projects are related with climate. That we know the issue that we have nowadays. So it's also easy to find opportunities in terms of framing your story. And it's also important to have an understanding of data bias and visualization. So in this case, it's important to try to identify possible biases on data collection. And I think this was really interesting in the experience we had with our citizen science projects and the journalists, was that, of course, if you bring a journalist in, the questions the databases are open, so they may have different questions that you haven't considered previously. And sometimes they can even, with these questions, improve the data that you already have, or make you correct some of the things that you didn't have into account before. There's always a concern about the simplicity of the messages, but nowadays it's really important that this is used and it's a tool used by the media also to include, for example, metaphors, still respecting the scientific rigor to reach broader audiences. In regards to different trends that we're seeing in journalism, of course, all the data visualization tools that we have now in regards to infographies, but also visual narratives that we can have in different news that also make it more easier and understandable to deliver key messages. I think one of the very relevant things that is also a resource that is available is that we tried to create a session, particularly where people would think about how they could deliver ethical and sound and reliable stories. So we used a particular case study, which was inspired in a real case scenario, where you had a group of or a migrant settlement near a lake city, where due to the conditions that they were living, they were inherently increasing the pollution of the lake. So of course, the citizen science data where they were collecting the quality of the water gave a conflict between whether and how they should communicate the results that they were giving, so that they wouldn't give an opportunity to further stigmatize an already vulnerable population. So I think, again, this case study went on different questions, and I think is for those who are already managing and leading citizen science projects that could be used within their own existing projects, to think a little bit about whether something similar could happen in their cases, and how they would react and how would they frame their stories before creating another issue, no? So as a consequence also for this, of course, as I said, you do not want stories to be also prone to misinformation and other actors that politicize and polarize the public opinion. So as a consequence of these sessions with the projects, we have created these misinformation recommendations for citizen science initiatives, where it helps you to avoid and tackle the polarization when misusing the information that you're providing, either in your websites, in newsletters, or also news articles that may come from it. So we wanted to move a little bit forward from this. So besides on supporting projects to pitch their stories and understand how to create a pitch to send to different media, we really wanted to go beyond into creating and establishing long-term relationships with the media. So within the different recommendations that came out in our blueprint was the co-production of journalistic stories. What we did was we offered some of our projects to pilot a small co-production of one story from their projects with different journalists, also taking into account that projects were in different stages. So of course, a project that is just starting may not have data, but may still have relevant information to tell to the general audience or to different audiences, no? So within the different time points of your project, you may have different stories to tell. And one thing, of course, very relevant is the element of the citizens that are participating. So you can also make them involved and be the primary sources of your stories. So these were two news that came out from these collaborations. And you can see already visually that the stories are different, but they also form engaging formats for different people to interact with the data, more in terms, for example, of the different maps that they were obtaining. And I'll just share, I hope it works. No, it won't work. Sorry, maybe I have a video, but maybe I can just scroll. Can you still see it?
Yeah, we can. I think if
Okay,
you
so
make
I'll
the
just,
screen on the internet, it will work.
yeah, so I'll just, so this was one also of the articles that came out from one of our projects. So this is more on a narrative format, also telling, as you can see, so it tells a little bit about the project, it tells about the problem. And then you can also see more in terms of what is the, let me see here in the end. Here you can see exactly more detailed data in terms of scientific knowledge that comes from this. Okay. Okay. So another thing that we have observed during the project lifetime was a new trend on participatory journalists. So in particularly, we pushed for the recognition of what is called citizen science journalism. And this combines particularly citizen science generated data and engaging methodologies with a narrative power and investigative process of data journalism. So the idea is that you create, again, the co-production of stories, bringing an active participation and dialogue with those that are generating the data, but also how can you empower them in terms of using that data forward. So one example that that we spotted out was the project Mapping Makoko. And this was a project that was done in collaboration with the Pulitzer Institute and different journalists from The Guardian, but also in connection with other organizations in Makoko that did the role of mediation within the citizens also of this area. So Makoko is a floating inner city slum. And the fact that they were able to map the entire urban area of this settlement gave them the case for improved public services and land ownership that they didn't have just because they weren't mapped. So I think this is a very special case where journalists and citizens can come together in terms of creating the data that then can have a direct implication in policies and on their lives. So regarding this, we did an exhibition in order to highlight the importance of the connection between these two different areas. And we also involved citizens themselves in terms of contributing to what this definition would be. I would also like to highlight this. So last year, the European Journalism Center did a training session regarding new trends on participatory journalism. And At the time, they mapped 4 live journalist initiatives, and I think now they already have, a year after, more than 20 around Europe. And the reason why I want to bring this, it's not particularly related with science topics, but it is a new trend that is bringing people into the stage to tell their stories. And I think this could be a really excellent opportunity for citizen science projects and the people who are participating in them to bring the subjects that they're working. And I think even, for example, in connection to ambassadors network, that we could create a very potential big impact within the communities that they are living. And I wanted to well, bring this into a highlight that maybe can inspire people to go for different collaborations. Because in the end, what we really want to do is not only to have these primary sources of information, but really empower them. And this is one of the articles that came out from the News Era project, was the role that citizens themselves can have in terms of creating opportunities to communicate what they're doing with others. And this is very much aligned with different trends that we are observing in journalism, is that even they have called it as what could be micro-influencers. And I think within the current geopolitical situations that we're living, this could be really important in terms of fostering trust in personal relationships. So since I know this series is gonna end, and we're very much trying to connect connections between the SCS Academy, but also academies from other projects that are still gonna be ongoing. I would just like to suggest, so next week we also have a training from the COLES project under the European Competence Center for Science Communication. This one is going to be related to stakeholder engagement, so I think it connects very well with the topic from today. We just opened this week an area that's called SciComm Toolbox, where we'll be able to upload different science communication resources. So we haven't announced it yet, but it will soon be populated with material. And I also would like to share this. So currently we are still creating what we call our science communication competence framework, very similar and complementary to the one that was created by part of the team that is here today for citizen science. So you're very much welcome to also support us in the validation process that we're currently undertaking. And we'll be very happy for you to contribute on this. So I'll just like to acknowledge all the different representatives that participated in the News Europe project, and also the COLES, SCS, and Impetus project for our funding within the European Union. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Joana, for such a comprehensive presentation. It was very useful, and I think I was just looking through the questions we received in the registration form, and you have answered most of them during your presentation. I would like to open the floor for discussion, questions from the audience. You're here, and we have quite a lot of time as well, so please feel free to either raise your hands. We have one hand already. Silvana, over to you.
Yeah, thank you, Joana. I saw that with journalists, with the industry, and I know that also in the interface between policy and science, personal relationship are crucial. But I mean, how can I create this personal relationship if there are no moments of of sharing with CEOs or MEPs, or because I just figuring scientists stalking people to create this personal relationship. So how do you see these difficulties?
Well, that's something that we all face in different levels, no? But I think that there are uh, opportunities, and particularly, I think the case of um, building on already existing networks. And I think also, for example, the fact that I think some of us, or maybe the majority that are here today, are collaborating in different projects. It's important that we create a connection between ourselves, because in the end, some of the doors that we're knocking are the same. So I think, for example, one of the things that worked very well when we had the New Zero project was to create collaborations between all the projects that were funded at the same time, and try to have a common vision or of what we could do. And this is something, of course, that happens at the project level, but at the citizen level, know what you could do. So you have, for example, the municipal assemblies that happen in most every municipality. You can also try to see which other organizations are working, that you have align objectives. So I always say, no, we have a sentence in Portugal that the amount makes the strength, or something like that. No, it's just we need to collectively come together, see who is already doing things, and how we can make this forward. No, also because we need to align to the agendas. No, it's all of us have a different agenda, and we need to understand what's at stake at that particular moment, so that you can create an opportunity to engage with people.
Thank you.
I don't know if it's still an abstraction level that I answered to, but yeah, I think this happens at the micro and micro level. Is when you find people, you try to find people who are already taking those, making those links. I think it's a way to start if you're starting.
Thank you.
No, thank you.
Thanks, Joana. Silvana, if I could contribute a little bit to that. As you also mentioned, building trust takes time, building relationships takes time. And sometimes, and hearing all of this, I think we all understand people love to share their stories. And so we have our agendas with the project, but I think to really build authentic relationships, we need to understand what's important to the other person. And maybe your aim is to build a relation with the MEP, and that's not possible in the first instance. Perhaps look at the community that the MEP is representing, something that is valuable to that MEP, and start building from the ground. It will take time, but I think the most important thing is to understand why is this, or how could this thing be important to that person, or what is important to that person, and starting seeing common grounds, and then building relationships, and then going from there. And I think I'm low-key trying to do that in my other projects as well, where I want to understand, for example, the research culture from a funder's level, but I don't have access. So I'm starting with community level researchers. Why is it important to them? What is their experience? And it might take me longer, but it still makes me understand from ground level what are the challenges, what are they looking for, what are the gaps. And with that understanding and knowledge, whenever I do get the chance to approach the person or the stakeholder, I have that ground level knowledge to strengthen my argument or my agenda. So, yeah.
Thank you.
Any?
Yeah, and for the record, the actually reaching MPs is quite easy, because they are obliged to respond to the emails. So you can
Technically.
start by that.
Yeah, don't know how much authentic relationship will come out of that.
Yeah, I know, but well, but it's a starting point. Sometimes you send an email and there's no response, but there are people that need to respond to you. So
That's a good point. Yeah, yeah. Any other questions for Joana, Silvana, Tesfaneh? Anybody? Claire?
Thank you very much for all the resources, Joanna. I look forward to your slides to be able to click on all of them. I tried to find the RioNet, but the link I think is down.
Which one? Sorry?
The RioNet, the citizen science project that you mentioned in the case study.
Yeah, probably they have that project is finished. Probably.
So, do you know where we can find their resources?
I can try to because RioNet is part of another project, a bigger one called Rios. So maybe they now have the resources in the other one. Yeah, but I
Okay.
can check it.
Thank
And
you.
I think well, not particularly to that project, but actually that I didn't mention it now, but there was something very interesting that happened within the Musera. It was so of course we had mostly projects from 3 different countries, so Portugal, Spain, and Italy, and we observed that in Portugal and Spain, there was a project similar to RioNet happening. They were not monitoring the same river, but of course, almost the entirety of the rivers that exist in Portugal actually come from Spain. So it doesn't make really sense that you're mapping the same river with different tools and not taking into account what you could do. So also when you think about biodiversity, probably you will look into the Peninsula Iberic as a whole. No, you won't understand about the front the yeah the how now I forgot the name
National borders.
Yes, thank you. The national border between them, no? So what we tried to push, so we created this first informal group of freshwater monitoring with more than 20 different organizations between both countries to start to work around this. So again, this what Silvana was saying, oh, how can I reach people? No, this started from informal conversation. I said, well, you're doing mostly the same thing. We could provide the structure, for example, to this meeting to happen. And that's what we did. And then it continued independently from the project. So I think also ourselves that are sometimes in the positions and we see this, sometimes it's easy to create the first seed for things to happen and then they go on their own way. So I think there are a lot of things that can happen that we can spur and then people will go.
Yeah, thank you, Joana. It also makes me think for Silvana. I mean, the soil projects, I know there's many around soil. In France, for example, I know another one that does soil monitoring at a much more local level. But I wonder if it would be relevant to kind of make connections, or maybe for the ambassadors, this could be interesting for them. But it's true that sometimes people are reticent to make connections. You know, they see you do the same project. It's kind of like you enter in competition with them, and you might not really understand the link and what could be the benefit of coming together. So yeah, sometimes doors are closed and they take time to open. And I think it also depends on the cultural context. I mean, in France, it also takes time to create these relationships. So I guess, yeah, a matter of time, I feel a lot of the time, and persistence perhaps also. And
Yeah,
also,
I think it's always worth it to give a try to build this relationship. The problem we have, for example, is that in some European country we don't have a partner. So it should be someone from Portugal managing the part in France. And of course, people don't know everything that it's happening in this country. So, for example, if you write the responsible for France saying that, maybe it can start a new collaboration. So I think we should always try. And then if it doesn't happen, okay.
yeah, it's true. I think it's not easy to work on a European projects and at a European scale, because we all do things very differently, and to have these connections is not an easy thing. I hope that I mean, our network of there's a lot of networks now that are being built also within the European citizen science projects, and perhaps that's also a good space to kind of come and connect, because there's also a lot of other people from other European projects in citizen science. Yeah, to make these countries or closer a little bit, because we are all talking about the same thing at the end, citizen science. So that's our linking point. But yeah, working for the ECS Academy, I mean, in relation to all the trainings that are happening across Europe, to know that this is going on with the different terminologies, takes time. And but I feel you, Silvana, and I hope that maybe in France, I see the email you sent me is in Portugal, so I don't think she's not in France, or based in France. She's not based in France. Yeah, so that's interesting. I'm wondering, how is she a French ambassador if she's not based in France, but also really nice. And so I'll email her to see what's going on, and I could put her in touch with other people.
Thank you.
Thanks, Claire and Silvana. Any questions from the audience? Any suggestions, any feedback, if you want to even share your experiences in the field on your particular projects? No, we have quite a few questions that we received in our registration forms. And the very first question, I've been looking at the question again and again, and I feel like it seems to be, oh, it's a different topic, but it's so relevant. So I'm just going to state it here. The question goes like, I study place names, and I'm quite amazed that people are not interested in the reason why a place has a certain name. I would like to find out how we can increase interest in such information and how to apply this situation to my sociolinguistic research on place names. And I think this might resonate with many researchers who are working on topics that aren't that they feel are not of interest to the people around them, to the society. And I think this can be extrapolated to different circumstances and situations as well. So, what are your opinions of how to make a non-interesting topic interesting or even relevant to your circle or different stakeholder groups?
So regarding actually place names, there is a citizen science project.
Oh, you muted.
I know. It was just a little bit of noise. So there's actually a project from the Galician Royal Academy of Language that they created a few years ago that was particularly related to toponyms. So there are projects related to that. So I think as we were talking about relationships, is that maybe you can find the right partner that can leverage your idea into the audience, no? And I'm thinking there was a few years ago a project that was presented in the European Citizen Science Association a conference that I think that person was working in the names of flowers in different European regions. A beautiful, beautiful project. And of course, you can link that to already existing projects that are mapping flowers, no? So I think these kind of synergies that may happen are always possible, no? So sometimes you may think that is something that is less attractive, but you can still find a way on finding the right partners to do it.
So relationship building is one. Claire, just one second. But any tips on using science communication strategies to make things more interesting or relatable?
Yeah, well, of course, like for example, I just saw one of the example that I showed you in with this new article on how you create a full story around the butterflies, their life cycle, no, and of course sometimes you don't have the capacity to create or all these visual stories, but I think you can bring the connection with the history, with the local context, even bring an historical episode related to the topic that you're working, that makes it more relatable to people.
Thank you, Joana. Clear?
Yeah, I mean, I would have a similar question to this question. I have a project in mind for a long time for around vegetables and how to make them for us to relate to vegetables in a way that is not just as a product but as a living thing. And I'm starting a PhD on this topic of nature connection and citizen science, and I think that the communication and the storytelling aspect of the world, of the environmental world, this is a bit of my question now, but it can have a very strong impact in the way that we relate and therefore care about the natural environment. And I wonder if that also kind of gets people engaged in a different way in a citizen science project, because it's a bit of a connection to the heart, let's say, of wanting to take care, or and so I'm also linking to that question, surprised that people don't want to know more or are not interested to know about these fun facts about the natural world, because it is quite crazy and fascinating. But I also, one thing is the way that we communicate about them is generally very dry and doesn't have a story to them. So I think that, yeah, storytelling is very strong in that perspective. And of course, maybe not all stories will speak the same to different people. But I'd be happy to hear if other people have some kind of answers to that, because I will be exploring the topic as well myself. And I don't know if the person about the local place name is here, but there is also this project done by the Ljubljana public library in Latvia, where they did a local places name. And one very interesting aspect of that project is that it was not registered. The local places name did not exist on an official registration list. And so they actually started with, and that was a good way to engage old elderly people that have this local history, this local knowledge, and this local place name, and that they enjoyed to partake because it was a chance for them to share about their history, and for the younger people to connect with these local histories, the local place names. But the local people were also the younger people were engaged in a different way by digitizing, for example, those places names and those stories. So it's kind of engaging in people in different ways. And in this case, maybe the good example is they managed to get people interested because they really went back to their own personal history with the local place name. Yeah.
Thanks, Claire. Any contributions to that? Yes, Joana?
Claire, I think in regards to plants, there's so many work from artists in regards to even plants agency, and I don't know, I can think about projects also doing sound performances with the plants. No, there are so many things that can make it relatable. I would I would suggest, I can think about some examples to send you, but there is for example a network called Fem Meeting, there are women in art, science, and technology. A lot of them are exploring this topic, but I think it could be something that you could explore, because I think there's a lot of work done on that very creatively, even for example in places like Ars Electronica, that that can bring you examples on how they are connecting people with experiencing non-human relationships, no?
Yeah, exactly. No, thank you, Joanna. I would love for any of these tips on getting there to some extent, because I know a lot of work in art is very powerful for this. Yeah, so I love to, if we could stay in touch about this, and I could get to know what you know, it would be lovely to exchange on this. Silvana, the project that I was speaking to you about in Paris, they actually try to reconnect people to the soil by doing also engaging with the arts to some extent, to have a story that is linked with the soil. I don't know if that's maybe another way to go about it, to engage, because it's powerful. Also, especially here, it was a problem with the community linking with the soil that was toxic, and so for them, it's these emotions that are strong because they know that they cannot grow anything on the soil because it's toxic. And so how do you reconcile? I mean, we talk about I don't remember the term used when we are sad and upset about the state of our environment. It's kind of, we have to grieve for it. There's also a lot of grieving in relation to our environment and the state of it, and how can we build back our relationship to take care. So it was a very interesting project because they did use arts and things like this to, from what I know now about the topic about nature connection and citizen science, is really how you frame the project. For example, there was another project by Jacqueline Golden. She created this pedagogy with a heartbeat, and she kind of got everyone to relate with the water, and then framed the citizen science project as kind of the health of the water. So it's how do you frame your measurements as well? Is it just for scientific validity, or it's to know the health, to be able to maybe take, I'm not sure, but it's a different way of relating, let's say, to the water body or maybe to the soil than what we're usually asked. Yeah. So
Yeah.
Thanks for sharing that, Claire. I think, sorry, Silvana, were you trying to
No,
answer?
just a brief thing. I agree that art is a very powerful tool, and we have one of the activities, for example, of the EcoSoil project is devoted to children, actually, and is with school, we aim at involving school in this, and they can prepare, text, poetry, drawings, whatever they want from an artistic point of view, and there will be like a sort of context, and so it's another way to involve art in the project, even if just in a limited activity. The soul stories, it's called.
Thanks, Silvana. A little connected question, again from the registration forms, was how can cultural norms and beliefs of the society be integrated in bringing society into the heart of research? Any comments? Cultural norms and beliefs of the society.
Well, I think this is actually is always involved in the concept of citizen science, because when you are involving citizens, you are taking all their beliefs and their culture. And for example, the thing that Joana was saying about linking the history to the name of the places, that for sure it involves also the cultural aspect of the people. What on the other side, what I think now we in general are more worried about is not to is to respect that, being maybe more neutral, as neutral as we can, and maybe that's something we can work on, and try to invert a bit this, because also with all the regulation we need to respect. Sometimes it's not really easy to consider all these aspects, but I think it's inherently included in the citizen science project.
Yes, thanks, Silvana. And I think when we get into these topics, it's so evident to see in today's world that it's so easy for anything and everything to be politicized and used as a propaganda. Like we're talking about street names, and I've been reading some articles from Belfast that they want to convert some street names into Irish names. And someone who knows the history of Belfast, is always a lot of controversy between Protestants and Catholics here, and something which could appear as simple as, okay, language change from English to Irish, but it holds so much sensitive history. And how do you communicate about this, and how to keep it neutral and not hurt sentiments, not feed into the political agendas of some people or parties or groups? It's it's massive undertaking of responsibility when we think about it. And I think that's why science communication didn't used to be, at least I remember, didn't used to be at the forefront of research when I was a researcher 10 years ago. But now it just seems like it's a civic responsibility, it's a scientific responsibility to know how to communicate. Yeah, it's a huge undertaking.
I would add to that, Pooja, that not only is a way to communicate in the sense of delivering, I think is an opportunity to active listening. Particularly if we go to the more participatory aspects of science communication and engaging with people, and I think citizen science can bring a lot to that, is to understand also what's really important for people. What are the questions that people want to be answered, no? And creating these channels, and I think science communication and citizen science are very much alike in that, is to create these kind of opportunities to make also science more relatable, to respond to the real needs of people. We need to listen. We need to get out of the lab and talk with people. And for me, this is one of the biggest opportunities that we have right now. Also because we are being asked to do it, no? So let's take the opportunity also to see what are still the gaps, what are the questions that we may not be asking, how can we do better, no?
Any researchers in this group today want to contribute to that? Do you think this has been relevant to your research? Have you had support while navigating your research for science communication? Yes, Tesfaneh.
Yeah, thank you. I think for my side, it's the best way to make communicate with the community. Practically, most of the time, we just produce evidences and publish it. So we couldn't any channel to communicate the community. So we couldn't get any progress on the issues. So I think to apply those principles today, I get a lot of information, a lot of experiences. I will try to include, if anything, also for next training or workshop, anything, I will join. And I think it's important. And also we can also include in our projects. So one way to just to, just apply our results specifically. For example, in our project, we have a monthly or a quarterly reports to the community and other members, but it's not enough. We can share to the community based on their language, based on their understanding, and I think in that way we will just make a good progress. But I think we need a strong support and also from your side, I think we need some communication also of our progress, because practically we will maybe do it, but we couldn't fully apply the principles. So we need your help for that aspect. Thank you.
I want to just share with Tesfaneh that there's a Citizen Science African Association that just started in South Africa, but it's also, I think there's a bigger one, and I wonder if it could be relevant for you to connect with them, because they're also then linked to the Global Citizen Science Partnership, and there's a lot of different associations. There's the one in Europe, which is quite active, which you can join definitely as a member. And I'm also mentioning the African one because it might be more context-based, and you can also have a bit more of an activity there because you are also in Africa. But yeah, letting you know, because I think a lot of you, adapting some communications programs or leaflets, for example, to your own context is also very relevant at large for the citizen science community, about adapting perhaps what is being created in one context to another, and getting that back is in the community is also really relevant. So whatever you produce and whatever you adapt from what you learn is relevant for others, I would say, perhaps in contexts that are more similar to yours. But I'll put the link.
Thank you. I got the link.
Because I think the question Pooja asked is very relevant to you, which is how can cultural norms and beliefs be integrated in bringing society into the heart of research? I mean, you're facing many different barriers, let's say, and cultural, I won't call them barriers, but I mean, religious beliefs clash very much with the topic that you're dealing with. And so this is interesting of how do you manage these different beliefs. And I left a little bit to finish what you had to say in your presentation, but I think one thing that I remembered is you mentioning that it's really putting the health of women in the center of saying, well, we understand that maybe religious beliefs are not pro-abortion, but this is the alternative, women kind of being at a risk about their own health. So I think that's a very interesting way of tackling that challenge.
Thanks, Claire. I've also put the link of the African Reproducibility Network. We were recently approached by them. They also do a lot of training for researchers across Africa, and we've also put them in touch with the CitySci Africa. So Claire helps make that connection and collaboration, and they've had some events, collaborative events already. So thank you, Claire, for that. I think we are approaching our time limit, so I'm gonna share my screen again just to give a little bit of highlights of where the network is going and the next steps. So first of all, thank you to all the speakers today for joining us and sharing their experiences about citizen science in their respective projects and countries as well. So as many of you would be aware already of the NR4CS, which is the Network of Researchers for Citizen Science, we initiated this collaboratively, the MCAA, along with UPCT and Learning Planet Institute, together with Claire and Muki, back in, was it 2023, Claire? And since then, we have delivered a bunch of training and have had in-person events and workshops as well. In this year, in 2026, we started off with our re-engagement kickoff meeting in February, and we've also had sessions on data quality and today on science communication. We've also had some relevant in-person events in Finland and Belgium and Slovenia across the months. Going forward, so the ECS project, European Citizen Science Project, is ending on the 31st of July. However, we will be continuing with the network. It might be called differently, but it will still be there. And to communicate how we plan to do that, we will be hosting a informal engagement meeting together with all of you, and we have a tentative date to do that on the 24th of July. We'll also be sharing all the resources that we have developed, which are available open access on MCA YouTube channel, and also some courses on Zenodo and the ECS Academy, of course, and sharing plans for the future of this network. You can always write to us on the ECS email, but also I've put my personal Mercury email here just in case after the project end it is non-functional, and also Claire's email is mentioned here. And with that, I'm gonna stop sharing my screen, and I do give the opportunity for any person here if they want to unmute themselves, open their camera, any last feedback, suggestions from this event. Is there any more interest area you'd like to share? Yes, Aminu, I see you've unmuted yourself.
Thank you very much. Sorry, I am somewhere outside the hospital. Maybe you'll be hearing some sounds, but I'm really happy to be part of this training. I've learned a lot, and it's actually an interesting journey from the beginning to this very moment. Thank you very much. Yeah.
Thank you, Amina. Thank you so much for that feedback. And it was lovely to meet you in person during the annual conference this year. And thank you also for contributing as a mentor to other networks you've been part of. Anyone else? Fernanda, I'm going to pick you out because I know that you've had experience at the Midnight Project, also dealt with a lot of public engagement and citizen science. Would you like to share any of your experiences? Sorry to put you on the spot.
Yes, was not planning this. Well, I have to say that my experience on citizen science is more on my professional side. So here at the hospital, I work at the Children's Hospital, and we are trying to implement this kind of participation citizen science. So in from the conception to the running of our projects, dealing with patients, of course, this aspect is important. But that's also why I'm so keen on participating in these networks and learning a bit more, because I have to say that my experience is still limited on putting it in practice. On the side of communication, on science communication, and all the work we've done, and some of the people present contributed during the Midnight Project. I see Muhammad. He had an amazing session organized last year. On that aspect, let's say that it's kind of easy because we do that all our lives as researchers, right? Communicating with the public. But when it gets to really involve them and contributing, then yes, it's tougher. So that's why it's so nice to hear all these experiences.
Fernanda, I have added YouCount was a project which work with youth, and they asked the youth to answer questions around inclusion, feeling of inclusion, and the youth really took part as researchers, and they created this handbook about how to engage with youth and how to get them to be co-researchers. So I don't know if this can be interesting for you, but it's in the chat.
Yes, definitely. Yes, thank you.
Thank you, Claire, and thank you, Fernanda, for sharing your experiences. Any last comments from anyone? If not, then you will be hearing from us again for the next meeting and plans for the NR4CS network. And with that, I would like to thank all of our participants and our speakers today, Joana, Silvana, and Tesfaneh, for joining us and sharing your work. We've recorded this meeting, so we'll be sharing this resource along with all the presentations shared today with all the registrants and participants. So thank you, everybody, and have a fantastic weekend ahead.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
In July. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Bye. Thank you.
Bye.
Have a
Thank
nice
you so
weekend.
much.
Thank you. You too.